It's always such a pleasure to be back in Amritsar, because this is where my ancestral roots lie. I belong to a place close to, a village close to Amritsar. Of course, we don't live there now. But because of that, a visit to Amritsar is always such a pleasure. Introductions, a lot of them, of course, can be misleading, but you like listening to somebody introducing you because only the good things are said about you. But the problem arises that when the person introducing you is your own sister, who all her life has been pulling your leg and never took you seriously. I'm not sure what all is mentioned here is said in all seriousness or as a joke. The other day when I was told that when Gurjeet Singh called me up and he said I should come here and speak on the need for honesty, integrity and ethics in our society. So I started, luckily you have this facility of, you can actually do some search on your mobile phones. So when I started reading up, I was a little taken aback. I came across a study which had been done in UK. Professional groups had been taken on a scale of 0 to 10. And the most impressive, of course, the highest grading in this survey was of the judges. On a scale of 10, they had an aggregate of 6 points. Next, of course, were the MPs and the MLAs. Now, this was a study done in UK. A little surprising because here I'm not sure if the MLAs and MPs rate exactly that high. Here, as you all know, that some of them even take money to ask questions. I think my friend Manpreet can throw more light on this, though he's never accused of anything like that. The shocking part was that the lowest in the category of these elite groups were the government ministers and, lo and behold, journalists. They figured at just about 3 on a scale of 10. Now, this was a study in UK. I think there are certain similarities of UK and India as far as these groups are concerned. But what occurred to me when I was driving down last night was that in the light of this survey, where journalists are rated reasonably low in perception, if I would be the right person actually to speak on honesty, integrity and ethics. So that is a kind of a dilemma I had, but I think this is your choice to have a journalist speak on this subject. Now, since the subject requires a very broad brush, I really do not know when you're talking of honesty, integrity and ethics in society as to where one can start. You must have all come across a study by a Berlin-based organization called the Transparency International, which does an annual survey of the most corrupt nations. And in their last survey, 2013, I think India ranks at 94. Now, 94 amongst the corrupt nations. So I think some of you might say that, well, 94 is not bad. There are at least 93 more corrupt nations than us. But the fact of the matter is that these 93 include countries like Somalia, North Korea, Afghanistan, Sudan. In fact, some of these countries, in my opinion, don't even fit into the exact definition of democratic nations. So I think, it's a matter of shame that we should actually figure where we do figure. Of course, since we all are obsessed with Pakistan, The good news is that Pakistan is more corrupt than us. Since you are also obsessed with China, the bad news is that China is more honest than us. So I think this is where we stand. But the sad part is that in the last 5 years, we have actually slipped, I think, at least 20 positions by way of corruption. So day after day, year after year, we are not getting more honest, but getting more corrupt. Now, this is a sad state of affairs. I was listening to Gurjeet's, the kind of things, the challenges he has and what he intends to do. I think one of the major challenges for groups like yours is that you are dealing with a very corrupt society. So even when you're trying to reach out and help people, I'm not sure how much of that help is actually reaching out to people. In fact, in this very study of the least corrupt or the most corrupt nations, the countries which came out as the least corrupt, look at the names. I think New Zealand, Denmark, Finland. Now these are the countries which can actually be rated as the developed countries. So if a country has to develop, I think it has to personally attack these parameters which actually do us down. Now, before I get into, I talk about the subject before us, which is honesty, integrity, and ethics. This is something which has been bothering me. I think we are a very hypocritical society. I think this is the, if you were ever to go for a little walk and hear some of these old people who have the time and discuss politics, I think they criticize, each and every of these politicians. But yet, when I say we are a hypocrite nation, we go and vote for these very politicians. The last elections, everybody eulogized Manpreet and his party. They drew great crowds, and finally, you give them no seat. This is the nation we are. This is the society we are. We talk of corruption, and if we don't get a seat in the railway bogie, we do not hesitate to give 100 rupees or a 500 rupee note to get a seat. If you're caught by a traffic cop on the road for traffic violation, which a lot of us do all the time, I think the first attempt is to get away. If you can't get away, bribe your way. And yet, we all talk of corruption. Now, I have often wondered where it actually starts. We all blame somebody else. We blame the society, we blame the government, we blame the politicians, we blame the bureaucrats. But in my opinion, I think the basic corruption starts at home. Who do you really blame? Do you need to blame everybody? I think we need to blame ourselves for what the situation is. When I say that the corruption basically starts at home, I am reminded of the days, when we were growing up. Some of us who have grown up in the village schools in the initial days would remember that when you were taught to write an application for leave, what do you normally write? And you're taught to write, you need leave because my grandmother has fallen sick. I think this is one of those, the normal things you were taught to write. Every child would normally write, make the reason of a grandmother being sick to take leave. A lot of them may not even have grandmothers at home, and yet this is what we are taught. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a chance along with the family to go to the United States. We were living there in a university for 6 months on a fellowship. I had taken the family along. My eldest son was then about, I think, 9 or 10 years old, and I had put him in a local school. So every day I would normally, you don't have the luxury of the drivers and whatever in those countries, you have to do a lot of things yourself. So I used to take him to the bus stop to drop him. And one of those days there was a late night function, and we did not get up in time, and he was late for his bus. So when I was walking into the bus, the caring parent that I was trying to tell him, I said, son, what will you tell your teacher as to why you're late? Maybe you can tell him the bus is late. So he says, no, Dad, the buses don't run late here, so how can I tell that? So we were just debating. So he said, well, don't worry about it. I'll just tell them that my parents overslept. They didn't wake me up, so I'm late. So I said, yeah, please, Ida Nagari, it's not right. So he said, don't worry. A lot of kids who come late say this, they tell the truth. Now, I was very impressed. Why do kids in our schools, in our homes, don't like to go to school? Because they are telling lies, they are being scolded, they are being beaten, they are being maltreated. Why do kids like to go to school in those countries? Because the school there is another home. So when I say this, I think this is why I say that the problem with us, dishonesty starts at home. Now, I think we, as I said when I started off, I said we are a very hypocrite society. Look at the hypocrisy within our society. We have often actually dubbed the entire West as an immoral society. And we always said we are a country of morals. Very honest. We have, great morality. We have, our boys and girls never went out together. They lived a perfect life. We blame the West because we feel they have live-in relationships, they have legalized homosexuality and whatever. In my opinion, I think these are countries which are more honest than us. They discovered what was happening and they decided to accept it. While we think that all is hunky-dory and we do not need to change. I know I am living in Chandigarh. Very often, some of us who have daughters, and I have a lot of friends, they would often, very proudly the mothers would claim, I have a daughter, she often goes to her friend's place for homework, she even stays the night there. In a lot of cases, the fact of the matter is that the girl, instead of going to a friend's place to do homework, is actually in Kasoli with her boyfriend. But yet, we like to believe that all this is not happening. वो आंदे जी मेरी पूरी तो बड़ी बीपी है, वो बेचारी की कसौली गई वो भी बीपी है. It's just that we need to accept this fact. There are lots of living relationships here. We are not willing to accept it. I don't mean any disrespect for anybody with growing up daughters. This is just a metaphor, just a way of explaining what is actually happening, but we are not willing to accept these facts. I think the need is to be practical. And if you are not practical, you will tell lies. I was thinking as to one of the reasons why there were no live-in relationships. Mind you, I am not one of those who is for live-in relationships. I am just trying to explain that this is why and possibly how it is happening. I was wondering why 100 years ago we did not have live-in relationships. I went into this aspect a little bit and I realized that I think most people got married at the age of about 14 or 16. As soon as they touched adolescence, they got married. Or they were married. It wasn't much of a choice. I mean, you ask your grandfather, great-grandfather at what age they were all married. There was a very clear gender distinction. The boys grew up in a different way, the girls in a different way. There was no mixing of the sexes. But gradually, we looked at the West and we realized that this is not how it should be. We need to have a minimum age for girls, which is 18, a minimum age for boys, which is 21. Now, when we did that, we did not realize the problems this is creating. There are biological, physiological problems, issues. We did not deal with that. The West did. And we still live in a denial, a state of denial. So I think what I'm trying to drive at is that the likely the repercussions of modernity, modern living, we did not accept. Which means we did not take a holistic view of the things as they are happening. Talking of Punjab, there was a reference of some of the previous polls also. I've often wondered as to why people from Punjab are wanting to go abroad. I think this is a major issue. I remember a couple of years ago when Sukhbir Singh Badal was in the opposition. He would once in a while drop by for a little chat, and once he would often tell me that I want to make a vision for the state. So I would tell him, I said there is a one-point vision. You have to create a Punjab, you have to create an India where people do not need to go abroad for studies or for work or for living. So that should, I think, I used to tell him that this is what you need to address all the way. Now we talk of a lot of development, we talk of a lot of industry coming in, we talk of whatever, but I think even now the people are still wanting to not live here and go abroad. So I don't think we are addressing, you might get an investment, you might get an industry, but as long as you are not addressing the basic issues, the basic economic conditions of people, I don't think people will like to, if they get a chance, they will still like to go abroad. I'm not suggesting that you go abroad, but I think I'm only emphasizing the need to change. We talk big, but at the same time, the basics are not dealt with. We are a democratic country. We claim that Punjab rates very high in various states. But here is a state which doesn't even have a democratic press. I was just talking to one people mentioning that in one of the newspapers, the problems they were facing was that a lot of news could not even get into the paper. There were forces which were working against them. I think, these are the signs, I won't even say of a feudal society, of a medieval society. Here is a state where private Punjabi news channels are not allowed to be run. Unless you get the nod from the top, you can't run a channel. And what is worse, people don't speak out. We accept things as they are. I think not only have we become corrupt, to a large extent we also become cowards. We talk about the great Punjabi pride and whatever. I used to often listen to Manpreet when he used to talk about how Punjabi will never remain under debt and he will always want to come out of it. Tell Manpreet, I'm sorry, I think times have changed. People are willing to accept so much of nonsense. This is happening day after day. Fortunately, there are some winds of change which are taking place. There was a mention of what happened in Delhi. I hope such winds of change sweep other parts of the country too. We had a similar experiment in Punjab, unfortunately, that at that point of time did not take off. There is a small difference which a lot of people are missing out. Delhi primarily is an urban society. People are aware. Places like Punjab, where we are primarily a rural society, where the awareness levels are low. And a lot of times it appears to me that we deliberately keep the awareness levels low, so that people can't think for themselves. So this is one of the primary challenges in the rural states like Punjab and possibly even Haryana and other states. But I think, as I said, it's a positive thing which is happening in Delhi, and I hope similar changes take place elsewhere. Now, since ours is a society which is deeply mired in corruption and dishonesty, reversal is going to be an extremely tall order. This is also because I think these weird systems are, I'm not sure if the governments are really even encouraging clean politics or clean society. So I would like to suggest that we have a code of ethics for each of the professional groups. A code of ethics for doctors, there is already one, but there is a lack of enforcement there. A code of ethics for engineers, code of ethics for journalists, for journalists, a code of ethics did come about in some of the countries abroad, but I think the profession is undergoing such a churning process that everything is gone for a six. We need a code of ethics for MLAs, MPs, but what is more important is that you just not have a code of ethics. You have a code of ethics which is enforced rigorously. Anybody who violates this is disqualified for years, so that they can't come into the same this thing. In fact, possibly, just a suggestion, I'm not a member of the Rotary Club, a code of ethics for some of these clubs, that anybody who is caught guilty of taxation violations, tax violations, is thrown out of the club. I don't know if it is done, but good. So I think these are the kind of changes that we need. The role of religious bodies is important. We are a deeply religious country. You know, when you start your business, you start buying a little land, you going in to look at a girl for your son, or vice versa, or you have an exam the next morning. We all pray. Whether it works or not, I'm not too sure, but we all like to pray. So since we are a deeply religious society, I think it is important that our religious heads and our religious institutions try and inculcate the sense of honesty and ethical living. Unfortunately, this is not what is happening. Last but not the least, I think we need a people's media. The media houses today, and of course the journalists, are as corrupt as other professions, if not more. So what we need, that instead of, these are supposed to be torch bearers and light posts, but that is not what is happening. The people have to get together, pool in money, set up societies, set up trusts, and these should be running newspapers and television channels. Today you have channels run by the Vinod Sharmas, the Gopal Kandas, the Badals, not this Badal, and so on. I think we need a media of the people. Unless you have a media of the people, you will not have a society which is ethical, which is an honest society. And till you have an ethical, honest society, you will not be able to progress. I think ours must be one of the few nations in the world where the considerations of caste and religion actually override the importance of the state or the nation. There is no nationhood. This is one of the primary reasons why even within the army, since Gurjeet mentioned about the various army traditions, even in the army we have to invoke our religion, the regimental spirit to fight in battle. So I think nationhood, the sense of nationhood will only come about if we have an absolute honest society, and for that I think the onus lies on each one of us. Thank you.